Yeah, that was a small. Bus track.
Well, John is on. Okay. So John's on. You're just gonna have to be patient. Hey, John, it's Karen. It's running off of my phone, hence the weird picture.
Hey, Karen, no worries.
Okay.
As long as you can hear.
Exactly.
Hi, Bill. We just wanted to let you know that MediaCom is down. So if you're trying to log on, you might not be from your. Do you want to use the salad? Do you want to, or do you call in the Teams chat phone number? Yeah, there should be a phone number inside that. Hi, Jen. How are we? Good point. Well, it's a good thing I didn't bring my laptop then.
Well, the good news is you're not committed to anybody and no one committed to us any favors based on my research, so.
If they did a gentleman's handshake between.
Yeah, not even that, I think two people talking in their head, going, yeah, I'll do that, yeah.
Actually, this is a more robust time.
It's one of those myths about school executives.
So this is hiring time, budget. And closing time. Too much stuff is on them for ESER 3.
So you really face.
Today I spent a lot of time chasing myself.
School without kids.
Yes.
I imagine it's a huge fishbowl of money.
Well, here we got one grant for that strategic manager. I don't get to hire. The state's already approved who they want us to choose. And that person gets the 126. Yeah.
When that comes up.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm happy to meet him. I was getting ready to get President
Bill Clevenger.
of conference.
John, are you still, can you still hear us?
Hey, John.
747
Hey, yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I had the mute button on.
Thanks, John, I got you.
947. Uh-huh.
Just give me a couple.
I tried to log in.
Sure. I'll send it. Ours is full. All right. I feel your pain.
Okay. We won't vote as much. The image, right?
So we would have to,
Well,
because it's not till July 1. You're right.
while Bill was trying.
We don't have to, yeah. We
Yeah,
don't
I
technically
guess
have
I-
to tonight. Well, next.
Emergency orders. After that. You can still find it.
I think while Bill's trying to get in, I will make sure that it. Governor's executive board and our town council. Meeting to every program. YouTube.
I'll make the motion since you brought the motion that we approve it as.
I feel like someone else should make sure. I'll second it. So, I'll. Get to do. Okay, can we simplify it and just do a lot of individuals since
Yeah.
every room is tailored this friendly?
I feel like it.
That's the line, Judge.
I usually do everybody.
Okay.
Not my first name.
Sally, yeah, Sally is fine. Sally. Paul,
Aye.
Karen, Bill Clevenger, John Rogers,
Present.
and you're,
you
how are you voting on the minutes from the last month?
Oh, I approve of the minutes.
Okay. So we're just waiting for Bill to confirm that he's on and also. Signed in.
Yeah, so he can't, yeah, he definitely.
County manager's report.
Hi, yes, Sally and I talked over the weekend because we happen to be in the same place. So in the future, I'll submit a town manager's report to you guys. I think Jonathan got. And currently working on a quarterly newsletter for Oprah. They canceled it for this quarter, so, but I'm gonna still send the letter and I'll send you guys as well. Some of the Cell Trail project. That leads me into the email I sent out to all of you regarding the trail projects. I mistakenly put $10,000 on that phase 2 trail project. I told you we had a capped agreement with Culver that's actually 9,000. And that was for design work very late in the trail project. And then on the phase 3 one, that's what we're sharing the cost with Culver Academies. Total cost for that contract is it's also capped at $60,000. For the academy share would be no more than 30 our share. That is because we're redesigning our route and going back through survey environmental and engineering on that. So I sort of gave you guys a heads up about that at your last meeting. If this is something you want to consider paying for, we're already starting to get invoices on that, so now would be the time to say.
You're talking about for the additional 6,000.
It would be 9,000 on the
Oh,
phase
9,000.
2 or 30,000. Two separate contracts, two separate investments. Each of those has been capped so that Troy Group cannot collect any more than both of those. NDOT won't pay out of grant dollars. This is not an ED, but this is a separate thing to deal with the redevelopment. Once you get to the stage in the NDOT project where you're done with, they call that the key stage. NDOT will not let you make changes after final tracings.
Hello.
So that's why you have that scenario.
Bill Clevenger, is that you that said hello?
Yes, Bill Clevenger.
Okay, welcome.
Welcome, Bill. We're in the middle of the, so you know, the town manager report.
Okay.
So the $39,000 that you're talking about is the town.
Yes, the council has committed to both of these contracts, agreed with Culver Academies on sharing the cost for phase 3. For phase 2, this is strictly us, we were trying to make some tweaks.
And when is all this money due?
So, phase 2 has already been done, the work is done, and they're starting an invoice for it.
And that's the 9,000.
Yeah, phase 3, this survey portion's done, started on it, so there's, yeah. But that one will be on for a little bit.
And the reason I'm asking is, get a little how this is doing. This time. Don't know. Or I'm sorry, parking shop, yeah, how this is doing differently. And I just don't know how much, I don't know how much money we have until we really start going through. That's what I'm asking about time. That was already, that was the town sponsor for.
Yeah, it would be like, it would. Same way the NDOT grant does, we pay out invoices, NDOT reimburses grant. Be similar to that, your 20% match, or this is just a whole separate concept. It's not any money, it's we're paying it no matter what. Uncover it, you can't, you don't know.
There's a list of things. It's good. My thoughts.
Put them in the list.
Put them in the list and prioritize off.
you have any recommendations as DRC should
No,
consider?
it's really that CRC has been supporting the trail project seller. Started this, phase 3 is separate seller, we want to that, and CRC stepped up to do that match. It's the only reason, I mean, it just saves the town from.
But we,
And that's something you can add to your list at a later time.
So that could happen in fiscal year.
I assume so, right here. I'll go ahead.
That's actually the other contract that
my point of view, I'd like to know that. Something like fiber in the town. Resources. Small my thought.
Yep, absolutely. That could be part of it.
Thank you.
We've got- we've
I was
got-
worried that you weren't gonna let us pay it all.
Any part that you cover would be appreciated.
The other issue that that's up on C551, maybe have someone serve as a liaison. If you guys are aware that there's a property on Tanner Road that is on C2. The owners of that property presented to EA and to put in a bridge unit type of fitness for their needs. This particular building will also have, they have to have a sprinkler system. They want to put a bathroom in each unit. There might be also like a central station for vehicles. So that same owner, knowing that the BZA approved the plan for the building, they now are interested in annex into town. And their next steps for that, because it's a C2 property, it might be one that has the potential to be. And also, given that it would be annexing it, assuming the council approves eviction, they're going to have to provide utility or negotiate with the owner on paying for that. Given that it has potential fit, given that there's discussion about fees and annexation under redevelopment, might somebody to present for some of those or start that next up with them. And I just thought redevelopment on that because project fact that it's go through.
And it's basically, as times it's dirt.
Yes. Round up bill.
Oh, right across from the cemetery.
Yes.
Like 4.5 acres, this is huge, it's a significant to the TIF. See those funds through. Whichever TIF it is. And especially incorporating resources to.
So, annexation laws have changed it. I'm brand new to the process. You have to bear with me. And as a council member, it's one thing to go with annexation. But I did want to give a heads up to redevelopment and see if
When
you
did you
all
want
want.
somebody on there?
Fairly soon. They're already reaching out to say they want to have a meeting with us and start talking about next steps. So my assumption is that through annexation, And it's a rather,
Next 2 weeks or the next?
yeah, I'd say in the next. So, I mean, the other side of it is I'll put it in the report. Loop Sally in the loop, but with Sally sitting, gonna be making a decision on the annexation side. Better for what.
So right now, that would just be somebody joining. They don't necessarily have to understand the annex into the TIF. Instead of utility expenditures.
And keep. It just seems. So think about that one and reach out to me. Then we'll reach out to Seth. The last thing that I wanted to let you know is, I had recently met with Paul on a topic, and we talked about, I think Jonathan was gonna residential tips for you guys. So I've got that on my list. We have couple of big research things going on right now that are due at the end of month. So I'm gonna put this on the list for early July, and I just wanted to give you a heads up that I'll. How you go about it, other towns.
Jonathan was shoulder versus
I do remember when I first looked into it, quite many, but it was closer than he had guessed it would.
I know that Jonathan thought it was real.
Collins just over. Yeah. Guys demonstrated it was certainly we could use more housing and use it.
There's a box there that uses
Affordable housing
that
for the
employees.
so
So this extra key opens up a locker that you need to grab some balls out of.
what's that, John?
The car key.
So the additional one that's hanging off. Opens up the locker downstairs. Be back in a second.
Yeah.
I think that's really all I had.
I know you're heading out to Blue Zone thing. Oh, okay.
But, yeah, there's gonna be one of those afterwards.
Yeah. But just sent you that information on the wayfinding. Talk about that later
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Just in a year, share that with reinforcing the town owns it. Any questions that you have?
Hey guys, we're having a really hard time. Can you hear us? Can you hear me? We're having a really hard time hearing anything on the Teams call. I'm not sure if there's a way to speak up, or I think because it's on the phone, it's like really intermittent. I'm not sure. Anyways, I'm sorry, Jenny. I didn't hear much of what you had to say.
Yeah, the same here with Bill Clevenger. I hear John. Is that you, John?
That's me, Bill. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear, but I didn't hear much of what Jenny had to say.
I will follow up with you on like a summary email, okay? in addition to the minutes, I'll write both of you a summary. Nothing to be voted on tonight.
Okay,
Thank you.
wonderful. Yeah,
Okay.
I had a sense based on the update that you provided in the email, Jenny, that would be a little more detail. So looking forward to getting that. Thank you.
Sure thing. Yeah, we're talking about an August of feedback from businesses so busy that it might be better toward summer versus now.
That's on the redevelopment meeting. She's saying that the redevelopment meeting is probably going to be postponed until
Yeah,
the end of
Cheryl.
August with Cheryl Morphew, just so you know.
Cheryl thought that was probably to do. We want to have good chamber owners. So once we get a date, we'll publish that out.
Okay. Thank you, and I guess on to your next meeting. If we have any,
Culver
if
on
we
the
have any
agenda.
questions for you, we'll write them down and ask you when we see you next.
All righty. Fun.
Thank you.
Sure.
The next item on the agenda is the financial report. We've received the financial report from the town clerk. Do I have a motion to approve that report? Or a discussion on it, or?
It's fine. I make a motion to approve the report as submitted.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second by Gary. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
Aye.
roll call.
So Sally,
Aye.
Paul, aye. Bill Clevenger,
Aye.
John Rogers,
Aye.
Jerry Perrick, aye. So it passes unanimously.
Do you want to give us an update, Gary, on, I saw an email that you were going to get together with Karen this upcoming week or so.
Yeah, now that there's a new town manager in place, Karen's very full plate is going to be less full, and we are planning to get together on Thursday to kind of go over those points to consider that I presented you with, cash
Okay.
flow situation, and your helpful comments back, because I was kind of working in a vacuum.
Right.
Hadn't been working on it like you have. And we're gonna get together and figure out an efficient way to get that cash flow dashboard up to speed so that, Paul doesn't have angst when Jenny asks for $60,000 or $30,000.
It only comes from putting 3 kids through college. So
Yeah.
that's where my angst comes from.
So none of us have angst. So we have, we have good visibility to cash flow. So we'll have, Karen and I will have a report at the next
Okay.
meeting as far as that cash flow template dashboard is concerned.
Very good. The next item on the agenda then is old business. Approval of claims. I have a motion to approve the claims that were submitted by Karen. And if anybody needs to look at them.
Yeah, I've looked at those online. She sent them out.
Right.
I'll make a motion to approve those claims.
I'll second that motion. I've read them as well.
Okay, so should I do a roll call now?
Unfortunately,
Okay, Sally,
aye.
Paul, aye. Bill,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Gary, aye. So it passes unanimously.
Unanimously. Thank you. We haven't actually done much with the MCDC funding contract. I don't think that the town has done anything, so I would suggest that we,
Laura was here.
Yeah.
Have they given us, she come back with 10 years? She wasn't happy before we did another contract. It wasn't her, but over the line. I thought she was gonna come. Contract should be.
I didn't actually quite get that from her, but, I definitely can get with her and talk to her and see, and also talk to the town manager and see if we can get a contract set up for that.
Halfway through the year.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like we're missing anything. Just saying it
Yeah,
out loud,
right.
it doesn't feel like we're missing anything, right?
I was just going back to the May 17 minutes, and, you know, she did present us with a progress
How can I
report,
keep curse off?
and I believe she updates that on a monthly basis. And it was, did you get that feeling?
No, actually, we're supposed to be 2 times a year.
Oh,
We're under the old
Yeah.
contract, but we're not under a contract.
Okay.
And we haven't paid them anything.
She did say that she would, like to come down more frequently, but, that's up to her.
Kind of feel it's up to her at this point, if they want to do something, and do something that's worthwhile with us in this fiscal year, then we should talk about it.
Yeah.
Because our world's not really on a good project with them.
That's correct. So we'll just kind of put that on hold and look at getting a contract and talking with her and see what she has to say. The
There was
next,
one, I'm sorry, there was
Yeah.
one thing that they are doing regardless. And that's, August, they're gonna talk about, they're gonna, on Texas. I've been talking to Greg Hildebrand. He's gonna help with the ribbon cutting. We've got a ribbon cut set up for what we're working on. And, he's gonna kind of going back and forth.
one thing that I guess this would be under new business that is not actually listed here, but we have to do the TIF reconciliation. Or what is it exactly? Is
We
that
need to do a
meeting with overlapping taxing unit? I'm sorry.
It's an informational meeting that, Steve is happy to have it. And the last years ago was.
There's that point. I don't want to enforce the car rule.
Somebody recorded that, and last year it just went ahead and. If that's what you would like to do. Reasonable, or take a couple of minutes and watch the recording. On your own, but I would suggest. As part of the meeting, it was.
I remember Rich talking about that.
Yeah,
Maybe
the overlapping.
Yeah.
Recorded it, so you could actually show it, or
You could show that recording because it basically, I honestly haven't watched it. I think it just kind of covers what TIF is and what it do, and then you all would need to update it with the projects that you have going on. And that's where maybe watching it once before that meeting, kind of knowing what. And if there's information. Get on the SharePoint. It may not be because we started SharePoint after that meeting.
Yeah.
I did come across it somewhere in my, I was doing, so I'll take a look.
is it of a size that can be posted on SharePoint?
I can't get on SharePoint right now, so I will follow up on that in the morning. If that's
If
okay.
it is, it would be great.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that may be where I saw it because I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it would be good if we could, if it would fit on SharePoint. That way we wouldn't have to get together to see it or advertise that we were
channel if you watch
Okay.
the meeting.
Oh, okay.
So perhaps Karen, send this.
Yes, well, you can, I'll take care of, I'll see.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the facade grant requests. John, do you want to present those?
Happy to. Yeah. So we can start with either Park and Shop or Civies. Civies is a little bit easier since they're asking for $1,850 for some signage replacement. And so it'd be $925 that we would cover. And then Park and Shop is a $100,000 roof project. That was the lowest bid was $100,000. So we would be funding as much as we could up to obviously 30,000.
Okay. You have all the paperwork that's required, correct? From what I saw you did.
Correct.
John, just a point of clarification, the Civies one I was looking at looked like it was just like one piece of paper, not handwritten request, but it didn't look as formal as the Park and Shop one. Was that at the wrong file?
The one I have has 8 pages from Civies.
All right, I was just looking at the wrong thing. Right there.
Yeah, I don't. I also have I put the hard copy in Sally's mailbox in Town Hall. So if you guys would like to look at the hard copy of the version as well, which includes the W-2.
It's in my mailbox. You might have stuck it in the wrong one.
Oh no.
So John, this
A different mailbox?
this is Paul on the Park and Shop. Were they also talking about repaving the parking lot and fixing the sign?
So yeah, they're gonna do all of that, but because because of the cost of the roof alone being so expensive, they're just gonna get started on some of those other projects and not wait for approval from us.
And I think that's gonna be great, the way it'll improve the look, and especially just coming into town. And that's kind of what the facade grant is for. So, pretty cool. You're a really popular guy now that you have this checkbook, right?
Yeah.
You want to look at Park and Shops or Civies?
Are there any other questions about either of the applications?
This is
No.
Bill Clevenger.
Go ahead, Bill.
I don't have a question on those 2 applications for Civies or Park and Shop. But the other day, Brian from Papa's approached me, and I have to kind of confess ignorance on this. As far as he being turned down, he's claiming that he had to do that roof because the water was leaking into his kitchen. Now, what did we turn him completely down?
No.
No. We approved up to 20,000 on everything but the roof. Because he had already completed the roof.
Well, he
before the
claimed, okay.
application.
So he has no way to so to say appeal. I mean, his question, he had to put the roof on.
Yeah, we all understand that, or at least patch it to where it didn't leak in. But we had discussed that, and he had completed it before it even came before the redevelopment commission.
Okay, all right. I just
And-
wanted to be able to loop on.
Yeah, the rules state clearly that you can't start until after the approval. We don't pay toward a repair or replacement or whatever until we've approved it, you know.
All right, okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Sure thing.
And Sally, the only other thing I recall from that was there may have been some confusion
Yeah,
on when the CRC meeting was scheduled, and the package came in the day after or something like that. Is that?
yeah, and that may be,
They had done the work. They had done the work again. Emergency.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's rolling 30,000. I mean, John knows this, and he's talking about thousands they have access to over. As previous repair and the side grant rolls off, they'll have access to get up. They need to
Yeah.
do, so.
and he had a list of, I think the total came up around 55,000 or something. And so, you know, half of the remaining, I think 30 was for the roof. And 25, so half of that remaining would still be eligible. And if he does the rest of the facade grant that he had applied for, we'll pay for half of whatever he completes.
Okay.
Yeah, we need a motion to approve Civi's sign facade grant for $925.
Clevenger moves.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
Yeah. All right. Sally,
Aye.
Paul, Bill,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Gary,
Motion passes. And Park and Shop, since theirs is, you know,
Can I ask one question before?
sure.
John, Park and Shop, when do they want this money?
He didn't give
Get
me
it when they're,
he didn't give me a specific date.
Yeah.
I think he's thinking the project will begin in October, was what he told me.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, it's done our financial stuff and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Just wanted to
Yeah.
know that. I didn't want to pick on Jenny for her 9,000 and not.
Yeah. Right. So, do I have a motion to approve Park and Shop's facade grant for 30,000?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, roll call.
Sally,
Aye.
Paul, Bill,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Gary,
Motion passes. Okay, the next item on our agenda is internet fiber discussion.
Sally, before we go to that,
Yeah,
I just,
sure.
again, looking at the minutes last month, we committed 90,000, I think, generally to
Yes,
facade. So are we basically committing another 30,000?
no, that comes out of that
Okay,
90,000.
so we're reducing the amount of the
So we
original
would have, yeah,
general allocation.
right, we would have, you know,
Just want to make sure that
remaining
we're not
something on,
adding to it.
something on the order of,
We're gonna bump up against that.
Oh, yeah, in this environment, it's
We're not already there.
we're not there yet, because we've spent, what, right at, that would, if these were paid today, it would be 30,900. And we've had another one for, yeah, 2,300. So we're at about 52 or 3 committed. And Papa's,
Gary will be able to tell us what that financial data.
and actually Papa's without, you know,
just gets more complicated.
is, it should be more in the vicinity of 50,000, because,
Okay, well, that helps. I just wanted, that was, things weren't as clear last in May as they are today. As far as where it's going. Okay. Internet.
internet, we have one reason that we're discussing internet, is the problem that we're having tonight. It comes and goes. Some people in town have had terrible time with the current internet that we have, MediaCom. And we need to take a look around and see what other options are out there. I think on the 30th, or right in that vicinity, we're having a meeting. Jenny, Monroe, myself, Karen, representing the school, and I believe you're also
Yeah,
on.
I've got a chance to.
Yeah.
I'd like to.
I'm thinking I'm forgetting somebody, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
So the history of that for years, I mean, this goes back 5 years ago. I was always trying to figure out what broadband internet node Bridge West and UHOS worked. And they interacted with Rochester Telephone. But at that point in time, Rochester Telephone was saying you don't have percent of the cost of putting it in, which about $6 million. And at that time, we had a letter from our CRC saying we're no longer. Prior to that, there was a survey done. There's some initial information gathered that surveys in SharePoint, survey results, RTC survey, and there was a general need. Business class broadband. From that, interacted, we as CRC interacted with Viacom. They told us they had such services, came and talked to us, and handshake agreement saying we'll get you up to this level, and we'll give you free Wi-Fi in all your spaces. That's documented in one of the public spaces. You get free Wi-Fi. To get this level of support from my contact is listed in the summary that I wrote up. But it appears that they've not done that. And we're ready for a little bond down. Can we do something? Find out whether it's the AT&T line that comes down to RTC, get fiber into the town. Is there a need? It's all part of. I gave Jenny the same documents so she can.
Right.
That for the meeting.
And, I've gotten complaints from, I know the business owners in town have complained. And, right in the middle of your busiest night, if you lose your internet and can't charge anything, you're in a world of hurts. Or like Papa's, you can't get any orders in for your online orders. I think Papa's and Lake House and Bourbon Street, and I'm not sure about the other two. And I'm not sure about Frida's either, but a lot of them take online orders.
Talk about remote work.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Talk about the school. School has, issues with this. I'll tell you the two biggest. I was part of the county broadband planning. Part of that we talked to ACPI, and CAT has its own deal, uses some microwave stuff and others. Probably should talk to them to see how much fiber comes down. If fiber comes down to them, ACPI has a different setup altogether, whether it's satellite, just because of the recording.
Right.
But going back and looking at the results of this survey, this is something really changing. To approach it as a utility, something that we find less cost and potentially bond out like we've done with water treatment.
So I guess basically we'll know a little bit more after, the 30th, but I do think we need to maybe get that same group and pursue other.
That are involved in this area. Do that. Sure, because fiber is the way to go, and then you go wireless off of that, and it really is something that makes a difference as a town. This is a town.
Sally?
Not be afraid of it.
Yes, Bill?
Could you give us I don't know, John, I had trouble hearing whoever that was. Could you just give us a brief synopsis of what was said?
Paul was saying, it was Paul Benedictus, and he was saying that, we've talked, I tell you what, I'm gonna let him give you
I'll give
a,
it to you in 30 seconds or less. Here it is.
just come up.
Yeah, let me have the 30-second version.
Here it is. We tried to do this before. We didn't go anywhere with it. It was too expensive for us. We thought it was too expensive as a redevelopment commission to get fiber through Rochester Telephone. We thought MediaCom would fix the problem. It hasn't fixed the problem. We need to go back and look at it. We need to go back and look at it and potentially spend some significant money to deliver a broadband solution that's going to work for the town.
Thanks, John. Yeah, thanks, Paul.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
The other, and I don't know if you heard the part where I said that we were having a meeting of Karen Schumann, myself, Jenny, Paul, and I can see him and can't think of his name.
Okay.
Anyway,
All right.
we're having a meeting on the 30th, and we're going to see if we can also hash out maybe another broadband internet.
All right.
A subgroup out of this.
Yeah, and make a subgroup or a group, Bill Giffens.
All right.
Okay, and David Harling. Bill Giffens and David Harling are also meeting in regards to this
All right.
on the 30th. So, do we need to discuss anything more on that?
Oh, thanks again.
Yeah. The next item, I put preserving Main Street, the grant application. The Main Street organization, no. Marty, did you want to say anything about?
Well, I'm here in case.
Okay.
If you'd like me to talk about it, I'd be happy to, or if you want to.
Well, basically, it's a $2 million grant that there's a possibility that, if you don't apply for it, you never get it. But we've applied, Main Street has applied. We've gotten support from many of the businesses downtown, the Academy, and some other areas. And it has a 10%, instead of 20%, it has 10% match. And the match basically goes into, rather than going toward the construction cost or the engineering cost, that amount would go toward Main Street it would be put in an account for the Main Street organization to then help other buildings in town with fix the facade, fix the, any major problems that they have, try to make Culver downtown look better, any kind of improvements that, yeah.
100% of the grant would stay low.
Yeah, it would stay local. You can explain that a little bit
Marty
more.
Osterman, Washington Street, Culver, and a member of the Main Street Board. And what I would say that match is unusual that it's 10
Yeah.
rather than 20, and that it is set up as an endowment. And it's kind of a 50-50 endowment. So it's 200,000. 100,000 is to work as an endowment to help maintain the project that is built with the 2 million. And the other 100,000 is a boost for your local Main Street organization. Without getting too deep into this is a very unusual grant opportunity. It's a pilot program, so there's no blueprint. It's never been done before. And one of the things they're attempting to do is to take a Main Street organization and lift it up into what's called the national status, which becomes a highly functional essentially a full person working on Main Street related projects, which we don't have today. It's an all volunteer organization today. So that 100,000 gives you 2 years of funding for that position essentially, while you're figuring out how to raise funds and become economically independent to continue to do that. It's also a grant that came up the day you had your last meeting.
Yes.
When MACOG approached us as the administrator for the grant, they approached Culver. They serve as a 5-county organization, came to Culver saying of the 5 counties, we think Culver represents the best opportunity possible in this grant because you've got the infrastructure, you've got it, but Okra is looking for the huge $1 million to they're going to get a successful result. You have to have historical Main Street designation, which we do, and then we have the infrastructure of the Main Street organization and the demonstrated ability through Stellar to raise matching funds, to administer the grant, and to execute the project. So, you know, as Maycock said, you guys check all the boxes, and we, you know, got the grant in, the application in last week. So we really didn't get a chance to come present to you guys and let you know what it's about. It just all happened kind of fast, and then again, it's also when.
Yeah, they approached Culver's Main Street, and then they contacted the town manager, and this was from the time that they heard about the grant until they had to have the paperwork, it was about 3 weeks, which is unusual, but
A lot of support from Sally. Thank you.
you're welcome.
You got town manager, you got town council support.
Town council, yes, Bill Gibbons was at all the discussions.
Yep.
And Jenny was very involved. Received a letter of support, as Sally said, from the academies, from the chamber, and I think there were a total of letters of support to the building owners. We put a pretty strong.
It's the historic district.
It's the 2 blocks from Washington Street to Hanson Street. And it runs Ohio Street, this is roughly speaking, Ohio Street to the alley east of Main Street.
Okay.
So
the
library is in it?
Carnegie Library is the old post office.
Yes.
Because I'm thinking if you're talking historic, you know,
Yes.
and it's an area, it's not built.
No, it's
And-
the district,
yeah.
there are buildings of interest that are named as part of establishing that. Not all the buildings in there are named. Some would be named today if it was done today that weren't named back then.
And when they first had that district designation, they started out as a designation for the Osborne block.
Yeah.
Because actually, not W.O. Osborne, but W.O.'s father had.
No history of this, so you can make
But
up whatever you want.
the
to say.
president of
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Actually built
Yeah.
the whole one side of Main Street, or had it built. And then that included the bank, which he had built and then remodeled. It was remodeled by his son, who took over the bank afterwards. And it goes on, so.
Just
But-
understand the timeline. You guys had a very quick time coming in. Next 2 big things for me is when you find it.
So, I'm a little fuzzy on that, Paul.
I thought
we-
the July 30th or something was the date that they were going to announce. And then-
That's very unusual, because usually what happens is, say, this is what we're gonna do with the money if you give it to them. We've got site control, we got a building, and we got a plan. And this is the exact opposite of that. What happens is then when you get, then they work with you to hire an architect to look around to see what project demands. And then you settle on a we said.
Right.
We'd want to do at least two. And then you kind of move from there. Our goal is to create economic.
Right.
Combine those two. So better looking building. And create more workers in this district. So
And then more people.
probably a year. It's a 2-year.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm also hearing, to me, that layers on do with facade grants. So that has an impact on, got this $2 million, that would definitely allow us other facade grants out of that area. That area will be more. Okay.
And we did.
And potentially, I mean, it depends on exactly what is chosen and what.
Yeah. Not gonna do anything in there, just, if that comes in, whatever, that does have an impact and.
And,
would
right.
Allow us to free up the facade grant money, some of it will.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
just want to understand the times.
I mean, you think about it, $100,000 to get you there.
No.
Project, right? We have, the mansion is 200, but we're hoping we can. And there's a variety of places, look, the rates that, and, we may see a $30,000 application from us, as part of, that match. I think that.
There's several buildings in that area that I know are in dire need of new roofs and a few other things. And then unfortunately, that was one of the reasons originally upped the amount from 10,000 to 30, because, if you have a very small margin that you're working on for, how do you pull out, 15 or 20 or 30,000 to put on a new roof? Some of the businesses downtown, they need that assistance, and that was the reason we upped it. So, at any rate, yeah.
For the area, the $2 million. Go along there.
Say again?
Definitely wouldn't hurt.
No. And, it definitely wouldn't hurt to get new faces, new businesses, more economic growth in the downtown area. Next item is TIF review. You want to discuss that any more?
And I'm high on the annoying scale tonight, so just put it on. Realize, can you hear me, John and Bill? Or do I need to get closer to the phone?
I can hear you.
If you want to sit down over here, you can.
I'm just antisocial. Okay, so TIF review, we haven't done it in, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. Review our TIF properties, and this is something I just think we need to update and do so we get the maximum amount of revenue out of our TIFs. There are some properties in the TIFs. One example is the Vanguard Evil Check. It's gone from being a high value property that was in our TIF before when it was an operating restaurant. Now it's worth nothing, and it has a drag down effect on our amount of money we get as a TIF. There are a couple other properties that we have through the town that probably need to be reviewed. There's opportunities we missed. The BP, when they expanded and doubled their size, that part wasn't in the TIF, so we lost that growth. I think that part wasn't. I could be wrong. But what is also big out there right now is that development that Jenny was talking about. That's a significant 7-figure change.
Did you hear her talk about the executive storage and executive warehouses down on Tamarack Road? You guys hear me?
I hear you. I didn't hear Jenny talk about that.
Okay.
Right.
4.5, I think. Is putting in executive level storage for people around the lake, and is it's right currently farmed. It's passed the planning commission and passed BZA on their requirements. They're asking to be annexed into the town. Once they're annexed into the town, it would be an ideal property to add to the TIF. And the change in value before and after construction is a seven-figure difference, which will have a huge impact on the amount of money we get as a TIF between now and the end of it, whichever TIF we put it in. The first one was in 34, and the other one ends in 36. Like, we need to do I believe we need to do housekeeping, and that may be a subcommittee out of the CRC to review all the TIF property. Down, we don't know what's going to happen, like 415, what that's going to turn into, whether it needs to stay in, and then the new areas that come in. So that's really all I wanted to say about that. And that may be something we do if we do a working session.
Thanks for that, Paul. That makes sense. I'd be open to a working session and finding a time to do that.
Okay, yeah, and we could have a work session, at any time. We just have to advertise it prior to. We need, about 4 or 5 days a week?
48 hours.
48 hours, yeah.
Past, sometimes we've done exec sessions as a precursor to the meeting, so you just come in an hour early.
Yeah.
And by the way, there is a cost. There's a filing and legal review costs.
I
that
think-
goes through with the TIF.
I was talking with, I'd asked in regards to that, and asked some prior numbers, and they said it's between 15 and 25,000 when you either set up a TIF or change a TIF.
Changes that are happening around here, I think the dollar amount far outweighs what this would cost us.
Yeah, it would probably be worth, and, we would need to ask the attorneys whether it would be beneficial to start a new TIF rather than try and wedge it into another one that's half gone.
So, Paul, not to put you on the spot, but you mentioned 7 figures. That like 2 million, 5 million, so 8 million.
All I can say is I went to the planning commission meeting. I just happened to go there, listen to something else, and that's all I got to talk about it. And so developer wants the lowest number possible. Everyone else, but there's a group that sets that. He sets, but number that they were arguing about was 2.5. We're just discussing, just bantering, discussing. It's a significant. It's the biggest new build in the town in a while.
Yes,
And it's on farmland right now that they own, so it's got that value, significant increase over that.
and I know you had wanted to discuss wayfinding, and I think some of these, and also a work session.
It is.
The wayfinding, the one at the intersection of Academy Road and Lakeshore Drive didn't look bad until they paved Lakeshore Drive and drove all those trucks over it.
Actually, I took
today.
pictures before.
Yeah, but I mean, it looks considerably worse tonight than it did earlier.
And
But
again, it's just me you have to put up. But, one things that we didn't understand before. Measure. So wayfinding was a great idea. It's done a lot of places. We went with street wayfinding. Thank goodness.
your cousin paid the payment because we couldn't find anyone in the world to do it. It
Yeah.
cost us almost $18,000 all in. A little bit for the design, a lot for the application and the road work, road guides around it. So if anyone goes to update it and fix it again, it's gonna cost a lot of money. We have no idea. I'm sending emails out to organizations. Main Spirit, or Discover Culver, Chamber. I talked to Ginny about going back to the streets department to say, do you have any information? Do you ever get any feedback? And then it's not, it's a request for information. Because I suspect we probably have no feedback. And I suspect, love to see something that says, oh yeah, that's made a difference in getting traffic to where we wanted to.
I know that I've had a couple of people that were visiting Culver that came in, that I knew, some that had graduated with me years back, and dark ages. But anyway, they said that they really liked the wayfinding signs, and that they thought Culver was looking really good.
That may be,
I don't know how much more you're going to get is, you know, a little bit of, hey, I think that looks great.
and I'm not sure either. I don't know if the town is ready just to reimburse and say the town wants to repaint it and maintain it. Because that's really on them to do that. And I just would encourage, if we're gonna do any more wayfinding, do street side wayfinding or street surface wayfinding, then we do it with the town saying, do a traffic study ahead of time. There's traffic flowing, put the wayfinding in, do a traffic study after, see what the effect. And that's really, because this was, it's 1 year old, needs to be fixed in certain areas already.
And I would say potentially traffic is different in town from a year ago just because it. So there's
Yeah,
some
that's
data
true.
there that, you know, needs to be included as far as the development downtown.
And we spent $18,000 to do this. It's an experiment. We don't have a way of measuring how successful it is. We're gonna do something with wayfinding because we also have that sign right out by the school. And that's a function of wayfinding. Just, it surprised me how quickly it deteriorated. That's the nature of the road. It's just the nature of the. I'd be reluctant to put $18,000 or $17,000 in just because it's.
I can say we've gotten like 15 phone calls about, slow down the speed or.
Yeah.
They call the school, but, or my office, but
Oh,
on the sign,
change
that's
it
the
about
thing.
passing along.
I think,
That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted to do about wayfinding.
Can I make a comment on that?
Sure.
Sure.
Just because it is on a strategic plan within the visitor center, wayfinding is something that has been talked about as well there. And the chamber provided input that essentially they would like to see more or better, both, right? And then there's also this aspect of electronic wayfinding, where, now there's an app where you go into the town and it tells you where to go, right? And you don't need actual signs. And then the thinking is, well, you kind of need old school and new school, and so I agree with you, Paul, that a look at this in a holistic way rather than that's update the paint is something that we should.
Things can get it. Yeah, this is one version. I just figured it's time to.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, is everyone here and the two that are on Teams call interested in work session, and when would you like it before the next meeting? Like an hour before, or would you prefer to have a work session in between this meeting and the next? I mean, is there a time that everyone?
Just the session. So,
Yeah.
going through the document that you read, showing everything. I think we have more than enough to cover a section.
I mean, we could do it Yeah.
is, but I'm good with recommendations, just doing it. For so many thousands and actually just thought, whatever else. Today, can't get this meeting done. Session needs to. Just so we should cover everything. Yeah.
Do you think it needs to be on a different day? I think if you get it too long, you know, people lose interest or the ability to sit in a, especially those chairs out in.
Let's not make it, first off, I don't have any experience with sessions, but let's not make it a double. Let's have a work session, perhaps if July's a bad month, maybe we have it after the.
Yeah. Well,
Productive as possible.
try to get some dates that would work for members and then.
So
And it, you know,
it's just
realistically wouldn't necessarily need to be in the evening.
without doing
It
a
could be,
quorum, back and forth first, we go on a work session. Sally and I have been sent the notes on topics, but there may be a. It feels to me the first session, halfway through the meeting for economic development, really. That's things that, for us, the band, library, for others, do budget that do this. So maybe we can come up with a list and say, part of the working session is what we tackle, prioritize, and deal with some. Like, pretty area that hate to try and cram too much into one meeting, get nothing. So could you email out after this meeting, asking people what they think should be in a working session and asking them when is the best time to do one, set the parameters of the workshop. So, tied to this meeting.
right.
We don't have to, I don't know if we have to solve that. Really, we need to do one.
Yeah.
The little that I heard, I think intermittently here, Paul, I agree. I think I like the idea of just sending out an email to try and coordinate and figure out timing and what would go on that work session to try and knock out as many like rich, thorough conversations as we need. And obviously, given the limits of teams, ideally in person for everybody. So of course, finding a date and time that works for everybody is essential.
We need a large space.
School this summer.
Yeah.
So I would be glad to get with Sally and set up doing the emails so we stay outside the quorum piece and we coordinate and get that. And can you figure out how to do that? So
Yeah, and
I'll be glad to do that.
figuring out a date, you don't have to worry about a quorum. You can say, send me the dates you're available in this week or these 2 weeks. Yeah.
Right.
And, it's not like asking for a vote or anything. You're just asking for availability to get a meeting together, which is allowed.
I'll work on getting the stuff together. I'll get it to you.
Yeah.
We'll work that out and then go from there. We'll go and set up the meeting.
Yeah. And we can.
We won't set it for failure. The meeting will be, here's what we plan to accomplish within that time.
No, I wasn't
Yeah.
insinuating.
No, I've been in those meetings when I force feed you 5 hours worth of stuff in 1 hour. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And you're burned out from one when you hear the next.
Good news, that's the last thing I have.
Great. Is there any public input?
I have,
Marty?
three very quick, suggestions, I guess.
You want to come just
Sure.
a little closer, just in case?
Marty Osterman here. Just with respect to the EDC discussion that you had earlier.
Right.
And I think you said you were going to get a hold of Laura and maybe get a hold of Ginny to help. The Crossroads meeting last week, Laura attended, and we did hit her pretty hard about that commitment to Culver, the $400,000, and where is it? And we're still expecting it, so I just wanted you to know that.
Yeah.
And then a suggestion would be to perhaps, rather than as busy as you are and Ginny are, is perhaps utilize Don Fox, who is our rep on that board,
Yeah.
to work, the contract issues, get Laura to whatever, necessary. I know when I was in that role, I was happy to do that. And then there would be a lot of conversations that would bypass me, and it made it hard to be an effective rep for Culver.
Right.
So I just suggest, Don, you got Don, you might want to use him
Okay.
for that.
Good idea.
And then Cheryl, I understand we want to put off, the businesses want to put things off until August. The one consideration there is that for economic planning for Culver, I think the stakeholders, the seasonal residents are an important part of that planning. And they're here now, right? And they're gone, when the businesses say, okay, woof, all right, I'm ready. So maybe we wait, as the businesses are suggesting, but maybe we use the time in the meantime to identify what stakeholders, from the seasonal residents we want to help us with this planning effort, so that when we do get underway, we know, who to call back into town to help us, think through some of this stuff.
And
And that was a suggestion I was gonna have someone do, is that we actually have 3 sessions of strategic. One that is now and one that is in the fall, and we have an intentional membership that attends each one of those, so that we get because otherwise you are missing a very impactful need.
Well, we want them to stay longer and spend more, right? So,
Yeah.
So let's include them in the planning and try to learn that, right?
Well,
so-
and it's hard to plan if you have one whole segment that's not there.
Right.
And our summer residents are a big segment.
And the last thing, and Paul, you probably already know this or know this well better than I, but I keep being surprised at how much AT&T fiber is in this town.
Yeah.
Already. It's in the I learned it's in the 110 North Main Street building. For example, the tenants there, the engineering firm there enjoys AT&T fiber into that building.
And
Well, I know AT&T, I don't think they run dark wire fiber all the way. They have, then it's a non-issue.
Right.
For us to do that. That would solve a huge problem. I do know that there are AT&T, because you used AT&T. Other people have used AT&T in town. I think don't think it's the dark fiber.
Oh,
But
okay.
we'll find out,
Yeah. I just wanted to mention that to you when you do your meeting at the end of the month. That, I had the cable guy at my house, and he said, that's an AT&T fiber line coming into your house. Now, the guy worked for AT&T that owned my house before, and that's why the line is in there. But I mean, it's around,
That would be
Yeah.
that would be a lovely.
I
lovely
do
solution.
know, when I moved from my old house to the new house, AT&T said, no, they didn't have any, and it wasn't available, the internet.
for residents,
Yeah, and they wouldn't even hook up, the dish kind or whatever.
Yeah.
They wouldn't hook anything up.
I just wanted to throw that out there, because I don't know that
That's
I've been
been-
at that meeting, and it continues to surprise me.
There
Oh,
again,
I'm
that
ready
was,
to do it.
3 years ago. Who knows what they're willing to do now that they weren't willing to do or aren't able to do 3 or 4 years ago.
So thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen public input? Kevin?
I'm gonna kind of second what Marty said about MCUC, because you need to put pressure on your rep. That's why you have a rep.
Yeah.
As a former rep, that's what they should be doing. I don't know that I completely agree with wayfinding because
Yeah.
you bought it, you kind of own it. I don't want to see it just deteriorate. So at some point, either it needs to be cleaned up, erased, because it's starting to look shabby. And that's like the
Yeah.
opposite of what we want it to be. It's looking bad. So I just want to make.
And it's maintenance is something that you can establish it. Your town or something. I had that, Jenny and I had that conversation. It's, maintained, just as town needs to decide what to do with the side of the fire building. They own it now, they have to maintain. Don't know if it's within our scope by maintenance.
I don't know that it is, but it is known as your project.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
So I think you kind of got to carry that on.
Yeah.
And that's why
And-
if we're gonna do more wayfinding, that we do some other things in support of it. But didn't want it to all of a sudden be sitting out there going, what a crappy looking thing. Excuse my language.
At a certain point, you may want to chip in just to make it go away.
Yeah.
That is my implication.
And I want to understand what impact is that. I've had people tell me, I don't look down when I'm about where I'm gonna turn. I do look at signs that are on.
A part of your solution anyway, because it's not
It is.
seen at certain times of year.
It is.
And, I think it's more visible to the people that are walking. I think the people that talked to me and said they liked it were the ones who were walking through town rather than driving through town. So I think that, we had agreed to put that down on, as a wayfinding. But I do think we still need wayfinding that's a permanent sign that sits there and says,
I
downtown's that
I'm
away.
not against wayfinding it. And I remember I talked to Jonathan when he was town manager and putting this in. He said, yeah, I know I have to maintain it. So I understand your concern.
Yeah.
And I just dealt
I don't
with,
put a post in there, don't blame me.
Yeah.
Right, I understand that. And I'm not talking about that.
I just dealt with MediaCom today.
Yeah.
I've got a tenant who is a work-at-home person who's been out without internet for weeks now. And they're trying to blame it on the cable running through the building. Well, that just doesn't go bad, and particularly not in a building that's too. So she had it, it's gone. They're not doing anything about it. I went back to Rich West because he was dealing with this stuff. And he said, well, I'm sorry, I can't do too much about it. One thing, the tenant is his daughter and has no effect on that. And second, they're doing a project at the Cove, which they are 3 weeks behind on. And he says, the contact that he'd been using is not returning calls, is not doing anything. I'm not sure unless you take it on, as Paul said, as a actual utility, if a better solution is to somehow, and I'm not exactly sure how, to promote competition.
Yeah.
Because if there were choices in town, then they're gonna have to step up their game or people will move on.
Right.
Like you said, Sally, we had DSL for a while and it just kept getting worse. I could tell at 3 o'clock when school got out, my internet went like that, and now I'm hearing DSL is pretty good in town because everybody switched over to MediaCom because it got promoted. But
And
they
at
increased
4
the
o'clock,
capacity.
MediaCom goes,
Yeah, so it's more trying to get them to want the business, and they don't seem to want the business. I told you the story before, it took close to 3 months to get them to serve the paddocks. You've got people out there calling them and wanting service, they don't care. So, I don't know, and the idea of making it a public utility is an interesting idea, it might work, but otherwise, how do we get them to?
how do you
somebody
get
else
more
coming in is
than,
gonna compete.
more than one company to come into
I'm
Culver
advocating
and
that
provide it?
Culver Broadband Corporate, I'm advocating that we treat it as a department, just like water, electricity.
But the
gas.
town took on garbage a while back and it has worked out fairly well and gotten a better rate and gotten that thing. And there is some clout with the town making that decision.
Yeah.
So it's not without merit to do that, but it's, now you're selecting who's going to be your partner to make that happen and the difference between cable and fiber and that would get tough. But some competition would make a huge difference.
Thanks, Kevin. Is there any other citizen input, public input? Hearing none, I will go on to member input. Karen, do you have
I
any?
have just one, so when, like, Papa's has 20,000, they just invoice as they need that 20,000, or? do
No,
we-
when they're done with their project, they
They
would,
get it all at once?
invoice, and, you know,
So like anybody that we provide money to, can they invoice us at any time? So for example, visitor centers, we gave them $9,000
Sod grants.
for
No,
marketing and
Yeah.
that. So can they invoice things to us? Can any entity that we have provided funding to, can they invoice?
Like for the visitor center, my understanding is they use outside vendors. Those vendors submit their invoices directly.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be on here, for example.
Okay.
You'll see, you'll see two Town Post Network, I think is the visitor center. And Midwest Parenting Pubs, publications, not places you drink. So, anyway,
Good clarification.
so those come directly to
Okay.
parent.
Okay.
And I guess I forgot how much we approved, I have to look at the minutes.
90, under 10,000.
yeah, a little
Yeah,
under 10,000.
So we keep track of that. So,
And on the facade grant, they have to submit, to,
Well, the only reason Papa's came to mind is because like most facade grants, it's a $1 amount and you come and get it, but they're
Yeah.
like is parceled out.
well,
So that's where. my
they
question-
made a request for an entire amount. We denied the 30,000 for the roof because they had already put the roof on prior to, submitting the request for the grant. So what was left of that, it's basically up to half of what's left, request that we would, of their lowest bid that we would pay.
and I think historically, they hadn't, 5 years hadn't gone last
Correct.
request.
Right.
Correct.
So we could only authorize 20,000 according.
I was just curious about how they get the money. How do
Yeah,
they-
and
Is
they,
it item for item or once and done and?
once and done, they submit it to Karen, and Karen takes a look, checks with me, and with the
So
paperwork
like on
that's
that
been
second
submitted.
thing, you talk about auditing wayfinding or auditing things that we have spent money on. Do we audit our facade money that we put out? Or do we audit other money that we put out as return an investment?
No,
I don't want us to feel like we're targeting certain
Oh, no.
places
Yeah.
to and not to, and to being fair and equitable and.
Sure.
right,
But when you're doing signage for an idea to move more people to get to one location, it's easier to measure before and after. A building, side grant programs designed differently, it's to improve the physical appearance of the outside of the building. Pay for it. They come identify a set amount meets the requirements, they get that amount in support of what they spend, the building looks better. Have a beauty says, okay, you should spend it different. That's our measurement of it. They'll invest. Businesses.
I agree with that. I agree that we're providing you this service now.
Sure.
It happened. Okay. So,
Barry, do you have any input? Paul, you're done.
Right.
John, do you have anything to say?
No, just looking forward to the work session.
Okay. Bill, do you have any comments? Bill Clevenger, do you have any comments? Hearing none, I have nothing further. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make such a motion.
Second.
I
Roll
vote
call.
yay.
Yeah,
Dolly.
aye.
Bill,
He may have,
John?
Aye.
Okay, so Bill's just questionable. It's not unanimous, but we have the majority.
okay,
We can go.
it's
You
adjourned.
guys could have gone late earlier.
Thank you.
But thank you for staying.
No attendance award in this one. Oh, you mentioned 3 through college. My heart goes out to you.
We all have to sign that.
So did
Yes.
Yeah, and it was more than.
I had the decision of getting 4 in college at the same time. There was 1 year where they were all in at the same time.
I had 2 overlaps.
I don't really see.
Couple of overlapping years with two.
Yes.
I got through that year and
Yeah.
it was like every year after that. You know,
I just felt like a stimulus program.
Yeah, yeah, it's stimulus payment every year after that.
All well worth it.
Sit for another round.
Catch you outside of that.
Another round, yeah. Like, night all.
Nice.
I have one meeting by 1 to 10.
Yeah, well, you come to my blue
Thank
zone
you for
meeting.
using your
I know
phone
I
Yeah.
could be in,
I think I'm good.
or the town's phone that you carry.
No, this is my
Oh,
phone.
that's your personal phone?